Hey kid, you want to learn how to win at Magic the Gathering? Well, just come into this alley with me and I'll show you how. Greetings, hatchlings, and welcome to another Ravnica Allegiance spoiler video. Today, we are going to talk about cards that outright win you the game with a very narrow focus. So let's get into that focus so that I don't get any comments down below from people who don't understand going, oh, hey, you missed this card or you missed this card. No, I didn't, because you don't know what we're talking about. Now, even with this addendum that I'm adding on here, there will still be people who will come into the comments and go, you missed this, but I'm telling you, I didn't. Unless it fits in these specific factors that I'm about to tell you about, I didn't miss it, okay? We're going to talk specifically about cards that win you the game outright. They say on the card, you win the game, and they involve counters being on the card, okay? In most cases, it's a building up, but we're going to actually start out with one that starts taking counters away. And this is the only really conditional one. We're going to start out with a conditional card. I mean, they all have conditions, but this one isn't quite like the others. One of these things just ain't like the others. All right, so we're starting out with Celestial Convergence on our journey here. And this is from Prophecy. Now, this is a 2-white, 2 casting cost enchantment. It comes into play with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you remove an omen counter from Celestial Convergence. If there are no omen counters left on Celestial Convergence, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest life total, the game is a draw. So this is an interesting one in that it can outright win you the game. It can outright win the game for your opponent. The other ones that we're talking about are just going to be specifically you winning. But this was an interesting corner case, and since we were talking about counter building win cons, I wanted to include it. Honestly, it's a really, really underwhelming card, truthfully. It's not terribly powerful, and there is the fact that your opponent has X number of turns to try and maneuver you into a situation where they can actually be at higher life or hammer your life down, whatever it is. It's really underwhelming. For 4 mana, that's all it does. It's pretty much unplayable, truthfully. There are much better ways to win off of life gain. Now, the artwork as well is really confusing too, because if you look at it, it's like, okay, so you've got this Celestial Convergence where it's an omen of whoever is healthiest, whoever is most full of life will rule by divine right or something. But you have what depicts a battlefield here with a bunch of fallen soldiers all over the place. You can see the swords stuck into the shields and the weapons cast aside, people just laying there all around these 2 people. But it's really confusing. Is this art trying to say that this game resulted in a tie? Like, you would expect it to show one person being showered in light and standing there triumphant and looking healthy. But it looks like these are 2 combatants. Honestly, this feels more like a card that was originally along the lines. If you look at the artwork, what I would design this card to be would be destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated except the creature with the highest power amongst each player's creatures. Then those creatures fight. Because that's what this looks like to me. It looks like chosen combat between 2 chosen warriors from opposing sides. It certainly doesn't look like somebody who's winning by divine right and life gain. So for me, that's a fail. And this is obviously the weakest of the cards we're going to talk about and pretty much absolutely unplayable, all right? The next one that we're going to talk about is a red card. It's called Chance Encounter. This one's from Odyssey. Now this is 2 red and 2 colorless. Whenever you win a coin flip, put a luck counter on Chance Encounter. Now obviously this card is kind of wonky. How many coin flip cards does Wizards of the Coast even make? Not too many. They used to make more cards with coin flips, and the Odyssey block had a fair smattering of them. Now, at the beginning of your upkeep, if Chance Encounter has 10 or more luck counters on it, you win the game. So you build it up by flipping a coin and winning. It's not just flipping the coin. You have to actually win the coin toss, and if you won 10 full coin tosses, then you win the game. Now, I like the name Chance Encounter. It ties in really well with the whole flipping of the coin thing. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, the artwork, again, is kind of confusing. If you look at it, I mean, you could go, okay, this is a chance encounter between two wizards. They're having a nice old fight there. It's a nice piece of artwork, don't get me wrong. I mean, both the characters look pretty cool with the crazy bone armor and like bone and leather staffs. They've got a very primitive feel to them. It looks like two members of the same tribe facing off against each other in some kind of magical duel. You've got the one holding out her hand with the crazy swirl of magic going on and everything like that, which is really nice. You've got the blue spheres hanging down. I do have to admit that the background noise is distracting. If you can hear that, I apologize. That's coming from my neighbor's apartment. I have zero control over that. And of course, as soon as I mention it, it stops. I was trying so hard to hold out. I'm just like, just soldier through it, ignore it, focus on the artwork, it'll stop. And it went on so long that I couldn't. I lost my train of thought. Let's get back to it. So, chance encounter, you've got these two facing off. It doesn't feel like anything. There's nothing random about this artwork. There's nothing that speaks to the random-esque nature. It feels like, even the previous artwork, they feel like repurposed artwork. It's a cool card conceptually, getting the 10 coin tosses, and there are a number of different cards you can use to get there. But overall, chance encounter, it doesn't feel like a very strong win condition. They get better as they go along, honestly. So the next one we're going to talk about is my personal favorite from the list, and that's Darksteel Reactor. This is a 4-cost artifact. It is indestructible, so it's made out of the same kind of dark steel metal that we talked about yesterday with the Colossus video. There it is again. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on Darksteel Reactor, and when Darksteel Reactor has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. I like this because it has a real feel of inevitability to it, and the concept of a reactor building up. This one actually makes sense flavorfully. So you have this indestructible reactor made out of this indestructible metal, and each turn it's building up like burp, 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 like a Dragon Ball rah, charge. And once you get to 20, you win. Now, obviously, that's going to take you 20 turns. That's a long, slow roll, but it is inevitable. Now, there was actually a card I really liked combining this with this. It was my own little clever trick. It's called Dismantle. Dismantle is a card that costs 1 red and 2 colors. It's a sorcery. Destroy target artifact, and then for every counter that was on the artifact that got destroyed, you can either put a +1/+1 counter or a charge counter on one of your own artifacts, which I really loved because, as you can see, you get tricky with the Darksteel Reactor. You go dismantle it, but oops, look at that. Darksteel Reactor is indestructible. So you ignore the destroy part, but you still get to do the counter part. So basically, let's say Darksteel Reactor had 5 counters on it. If you play this card, all of a sudden, now it's got 10 counters on it. It didn't get destroyed. You add 5 more counters to it. So if you have 10 counters on a Darksteel Reactor when you play Dismantle, you actually win straight up. So I built a deck to play this. It's actually something that I thought was cool enough that I ended up building a deck to play with it. But I also have another memory about this card that makes me angry with my friend Five Staff. I was so livid. I brought this deck into the tournament because you got to remember, this is before doubling season or anything like that. So I had my fun little tricky combo that I wanted to play on people. I sit down beside Five Staff. I start setting my deck up, getting it all together. He looks at the deck that I'm playing, and then in our first game, he cranial extractions naming Darksteel Reactor, and I lost my mind on him. I'm like, you know what, man? Fuck you. I thought we were friends, buddy, okay? I came and sat and chatted with you for fun, and you scouted out my deck. If he had done it in the second game, if he cranial extracted into my reactor in the second game, then that would have been fine because he would know what the deck was. It's not like I'm playing some net deck where he can know what I'm doing ahead of time. No, the only reason that he knew what I was playing and knew what to say was because I sat down to have a friendly chat with him. So I got so angry with him. I'm like, so this is what it's going to be like. I can't sit down and chat with you beforehand. You're going to scout out my deck and be like this? All right, to you, buddy. And I wouldn't talk to him for like a week. He came up to me and tried to apologize to me. And I'm like, forget it, man. Forget it. Get out of my face. But either way, I definitely really like this card. The artwork fits with the concept. It actually does look like a giant thing made out of dark steel. It's a weird shape. I don't know exactly like what they were going for, like what it's supposed to be, but it's just this big floating mass of dark steel that has the green energy in it, and you've got all the lightning crackling out, and I like the fact that it's set above a desolate setting with the cracked earth and the background. Like, there's nothing really to distract you from it. It's ominous, it's the only thing there, and it feels like eventually it's just gonna go bam and win you the game, man. I definitely enjoyed playing with this card a lot, except for that one game. All right, moving on. We're going to Helix Pinnacle. Now, this one's kind of nutty. 1 green to put out. It's an enchantment. It's got Shroud, which means it can't be targeted by any player. Shroud's been replaced by Hexproof because Hexproof is an actually better ability. So you can pay X mana and you put X tower counters on Helix Pinnacle. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game. That's pretty cool. 100 though is absolutely insane. You have to spend 100 mana to win the game. 100 mana. That's insane, but also a lot of fun. It gives you a goal to strive for, and when you make it happen, it's that feel good. These are the feel good cards where you put in the work to make it happen. And so when you actually pull it off, it feels really dope. And I really like this artwork. It's got this nice contrast of dark and light. It's an elven ritual that's going on, and you can see it's in the dark times of Shadowmoor, right? This isn't in the light times of Lorwyn, because you had the light times of Lorwyn, and this is in the dark times where things are more unpleasant. And I really enjoyed this whole switch in Lorwyn where they had a light world and a dark world. So you have these elves where the darkness is closing in and you can feel it. And like even this is forest around them, but the forest feels dark and evil, like a Blair Witch style forest. And you can tell, like, elves are normally aligned with the forest, right? And you would expect the forest to be like a happy, welcoming place, but it doesn't feel welcoming to them. I enjoy the fact that you've got the helix, which is slowly but surely getting greater as they pour more mana into it. It sticks around, right? And elves, there's a bunch of elves that produce mana in Magic the Gathering. So you have these elves and you can see them channeling green mana into their hands and adding it to the helix, which is a really nice way of tying in the whole flavor of the card, because you can use a bunch of mana elves to pump it. And there were a bunch of cool mana elves in the same block with this. So flavor-wise, this really fits. The contrast of the dark forest kind of creeping in versus the pinnacle bursting up into the sky. This is their chance for like victory. Absolutely love it. The only hope of the elves in the dark time of the switched world of Lorwyn. Very cool. Then we move on to Mael's Area. Now this is 1 red, 1 aria, not area. Mael's Area is a different place. Oh, that's a different win con. All right. So it's a red, a green, and a white. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control if you control a creature with power 5 or greater. Then you gain 10 life if you control a creature with power 10 or greater. Then you win the game if you control a creature with power 20 or greater. Now I like this one because it's built in a way where it can build you towards the win con, but you can also just use it to win con by putting out a massive creature too. So you can either put out a creature and slow roll grow it and keep gaining benefits from it, or you can just manage to put out a massive creature and win outright. But it's cool, as long as you have a creature at all, it'll start to, as long as you have a creature with power 5 or greater, then your guys will grow. And from there on, you'll just keep going. If they can't do anything about it, it'll get bigger. Once you hit the 10, you're gaining 10 life a turn, which makes you harder to take out so you last longer. And then the straight up winning by just having a massive creature appeals to me, because I loved playing big green creature decks back in the day. So just having a big creature to win the game is really awesome in my opinion. Now turning to the artwork, that is really awesome too, because what you have is you have Mael the Anima, who, if you don't know, is this crazy like blinded seer. She's awesome. Her artwork looks amazing actually. If you look at the artwork on her card, she's just wreathed and she feels like a very nature aligned creature. Honestly, you don't really see the red or the white from her. She feels very green, but she looks absolutely beautiful here. I love this. I love the contrast of this beautiful woman standing up with her arms swept back to kind of show this is her song, right? An aria is a song, so that music is going out into like the forest and it's imbuing the forest creatures. I absolutely love the way she looks with their clothes like flowing behind her, because you can see the wind is rustling her clothes. She has all these long vines of berries and plants and flowers strewn all across her. She feels very much like a nature spirit. She's standing on this nice stone balcony with these obelisks, these old cracked obelisks. The whole place has a real sense of age, not only because of the damaged stone, but also all the leaves and everything twining around it. And off in the distance, you have a 5-headed Hydra that might just be Progenitus. Off in the distance, she is singing. Her aria is for Progenitus. Raw Progenitus! Or she's just making another Hydra massive. Either way, the artwork on this is absolutely gorgeous. Steve Argyle knocked it out of the park with this one. It's 100. It's so good. I don't want to stop looking at it. I don't want to move on, but we must, friends. We must, because there are more cards to cover, more win cons to talk about. Oh, all right. What's next? Azor's Elocutors. Now, this is a very interesting one. It has hybrid mana, so this is from the Azorius Guild, obviously, and it's 1/white blue, 1/white blue, so that's 2 in total, plus 3 colorless, 2 of the hybrid mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a filibuster counter on Azor's Elocutors. Then if Azor's Elocutors has 5 or more filibuster counters on it, you win the game. Whenever a source deals damage to you, you remove a filibuster counter from Azor's Elocutors. For those of you who don't understand the concept behind this, the Azorius are law mages. And the flavor behind this is absolutely fantastic, because a filibuster is when somebody goes up and attempts to talk for so long that they don't give any of their political opponents an ability to speak or do anything about what's going on. So it's basically like, I'm going to take the podium here, and the rules of law say for as long as I'm talking, nobody else is allowed to come and take up. So they'll just go on about anything. Filibustering is just endlessly yammering about things to make sure that your opponents don't have an ability to interrupt you, to do anything that they want to do. So I enjoy the way that this is communicated, where every turn they start filibustering, and the filibuster gets broken, but through combat damage, or actually not just combat damage, any type of damage. But if for 5 turns they manage to filibuster unopposed, then you win the game. You just take over everything with your legal jibber jabber. That is a lot of fun conceptually, and it's something you don't normally see on a Magic card. The idea of winning through law filibustering, and the artwork is really stunning as well. You've got the sunlight flowing in over 3 Azorius law mages, and they're sitting there all filibustering, just chanting from what I presume are enchanted scrolls. And they just don't stop. The entire time they're there, they're just constantly chanting from these scrolls and getting you closer and closer to that full-on law lockdown, which is really dope. That's awesome. So let's move on to the next card and see if it is as awesome. Now we're moving outside the realm of normal Magic into some unfun, but I wanted to be thorough, so I'm including this card from Unstable as well. This is As Luck Would Have It, and it's kind of tied into Helix Pinnacle. It's a very similar card. It's 1 cast green. It is hexproof, and whenever you would roll a die, you put a number of luck counters on As Luck Would Have It equal to the result. Then if there are 100 or more luck counters on As Luck Would Have It, you win the game. So with this, obviously, you want to be rolling a bunch of dice. Now, if you go back to the earlier unsets, there were a bunch of cards that let you roll dice. There's a bunch of cards that let you roll dice, like Old Buzzbark in Unstable as well. So it totally fits in with that kind of theme. It doesn't seem like it would be too hard to do. Now, when it comes to the artwork, I think this is fun. I genuinely do. You have a barbarian sitting there, right, with a big old axe in the background, and then you've got all these little symbols of luck. You've got like the crossed fingers for good luck. You got her holding a lucky coin. You've got a 4-leaf clover for luck tucked here. You've got a rabbit. Now, if you're wondering what that's doing, rabbit's feet are lucky. And what's luckier than 1 rabbit's foot? 4. And what's luckier than 4 rabbit's feet disattached from a rabbit? 4 rabbit's feet attached to a rabbit, because that's 1 lucky rabbit. And then beside it, you've got a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's a whole bunch of luck going on in this. I like it. And also, I just enjoy how jovial the barbarian looks. You don't normally see barbarians looking this happy, just kind of chilling. There might even be, oh, there is. Look at that. She's got a horseshoe tied around her neck too. There may be some other signs of luck that I'm missing here in the artwork. So if I miss something, let me know, boys. I'm not always 100% thorough, and I do miss things. So, as luck would have it, that brings us to the spoiler for today, what spawned this entire conversation. And that's Simic Ascendancy. This is a blue and a green enchantment. The ability is pay 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 colors. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy Stupid hiccups. Everything's going wrong. If Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. So, this is interesting. Let's pull it apart. For those of you who don't know, the Simic on Ravnica, originally what they were was they were biomancers that were tasked with caring for the life forms of Ravnica. So they were Ravnica's healers and things like that, but they slowly became kind of dissatisfied with that role, and they started to tinker with the life forms on Ravnica. They started to experiment with them and bioengineer. And it reached the point where obviously a lot of Ravnicans didn't really want to be experimented on, so they wouldn't really volunteer for this. So the Simic started coming up with cytoplasts, which could be attached involuntarily to people. Now, the Simic Combine of today has eschewed that. They're no longer willing to use those methods because the leader of the Simic went nuts, tried to take over all of Ravnica. It all ended ugly. We will talk about that in a lore video at some point because it's a fantastic story. But regardless, the new Simic is focused on magical augmentation as opposed to bioengineering. And that's what the Simic Ascendancy is, even though it really does kind of look, if you look at the artwork, it does kind of have that, it kind of gives a bioengineered feel, but it's really just magic doing this way instead of changing the actual being. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that you see the blade that is like sprouting up from the guy's hand, and you can see little like spikes of magic. It feels like this is half old school Simic to me, honestly. This could really fit into the old Simic Combine. So maybe they are kind of half still experimenting with changing people, but it does also feel like an enchantment because the spiked blade that's coming out of the guy's hand here, it doesn't really look so much like it's permanently added to him. It does look like an enchanted weapon. Now the tentacles that are coming off of the cloak that he's wearing, because that's not part of his body too, and that also shows that they're not really experimenting with the body so much and with enchantment and augmentation. It's a big enchantment cloak that's on him that has crazy tentacle pods that would make you think of something along the lines of, if you know what a displacer beast is from Dungeons and Dragons, it's got a very displacer beast feel with those. Or you could look at it if you want to pick like a sea creature, like an octopus or something, but it's got all the spikes along the undersides of, I think these are called like pseudopods or something. But either way, it's definitely got a menacing feel to it. It definitely gives the concept that this is aligned with +1/+1 counters because it looks like this is a creature that's being enhanced by those. It's got that growth concept to it. I like this idea. I like the idea of building to ascendancy, where it's just like we have grown into a being more powerful than you can comprehend, and with that power